Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Empire of Dust versus Twilight Kin. This battle was fought at 2250 points, sort of, and the scenario was Scavenge. So this is what I meant by sort of. Starting out, we have my opponent's army, which has the Gemini formation, which involves 2 Hydrae. Normally, a Hydra has a special rule called Many Heads, and that gives it a bonus number of attacks equal to the amount of damage it has currently on it. So if it has 7 damage on it before it attacks, it now has 12 attacks because a Hydra has base 5, and 5 plus 7 is 12. Now in Gemini, you get a bonus number of attacks, an additional bonus number of attacks equal to the amount of damage the other Hydra in the formation has. So if one has 6 damage and the other has 3 damage, then they both have 14 attacks, because 6 plus 3 plus 5 is 14. So pretty cool formation. Next up, we have the Knight Dancers formation, which involves 2 regiments of Blade Dancers, one of whom in this case has the Brew of Haste, and then 2 troops of Blade Dancers. In this formation, all those units gain Stealthy and Mind Thirst. Next up, we have 2 hordes of crossbowmen. One has the Dragon Shard Shield and the other the Blessing of the Gods. I know my opponent originally wanted to give them Brew of Strength and Hammer of Measured Force, but thankfully I talked him out of that one. So yeah, just not that helpful on crossbowmen. And I can get into that a little later. Then we have 3 troops of gargoyles. Then we have a horde of fiends with the Caterpillar Potion, an ASB with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, and then 2 High Priestesses of the Abyss, both of whom have Banechant 2. One of them has the Inspiring Talisman, and the other Mirrodin's Amulet of the Fireheart and Weakness 2. So that's the idea of the list. You can see it's a little over in points, and that is because my opponent accidentally put down 1 too many troops of gargoyles. Now, even without that unit of gargoyles, I think they would still have 15 points left, and I'm not exactly sure where that was. But as I said before, originally, the crossbowmen hordes, one had the Brew of Strength, so that was 30 points, and then the other had the Hammer of Measured Force, which I believe is 20. So there's 5 points there. I don't know where the other 10 points were. The reason for those items were that my opponent really wanted to make them a bit more melee capable, which I guess is okay. At that point, why not just run chariots though? They're significantly better at that role. In the end, I talked him into running Blessing of the Gods and Dragon Shard if he wanted them to be a little bit more powerful in melee as well, since it doesn't make it so you're charging with crossbowmen, which is just a complete waste of your points. And that's about it. Other than that, I think the list is pretty standard. Again, I'd probably swap those crossbowmen out for chariot hordes, especially given my opponent's want for a bit more melee punch on those ranged units. And moving forward, we have my Empire of Dust list. It's a little different from the one I've been running. First off, I always have the Mummy's Revenge, which involves a Cursed High Priest. I gave mine heal 4 and 2 regiments of mummies. Both these regiments of mummies gain Elite and Vicious in that formation. Next up, we have a horde of Revenants with the Banner of the Griffin this time, and a regiment of Scavengers following them, followed by a horde of Revenant Chariots with the Caterpillar Potion. Then we have another Cursed High Priest with heal 4, an Idol of Shobik, Mortibris the Necromancer, 2 Bone Giants, and the Soul Snare. So yeah, this is a slight change from my previous army, or my previous list, where instead of the 2 regiments of Revenant Chariots, I brought a regiment, and the Pharaoh on Chariot, I brought a regiment of Scavengers and the Idol of Shobik. I also shuffled a few of the items around, I think actually just one now that I look at it, where the Revenants had the Brew of Strength, and I wanted to try running the Banner of the Griffin. So we'll see how the list plays out, and let's move forward. So here we see the table, and before I get into anything else, of course, let's talk about the terrain. So this side of the table, let's not worry about that because we didn't go over there. So first off, in Scavenge, you have the, whoa, doing a bad job today. So you've got the center line. What is up with my mouse? But anyway, so we've got the center line there. First off, you get 1 objective placed in the dead center of the table, and then each player, starting with the person who won the roll-off, my opponent in this case, you place 1 objective. So my opponent placed 1 here, and then I placed 1 here. So they have to be 12 inches away from each other and 3 inches away from impassable, just like objectives do. In Scavenge, you are trying to get over to the objectives when you control it. At the end of a movement, you can pull I think it's at the end of your movement. It might be at the end of your turn, but you pull a loot token out of that objective. Each unit can have a maximum of 1 loot counter each. And the normal rules for loot apply, so you're down to speed 5, you lose flight, you can't be surged forward, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and the only other special rule I can think of is that at the end of a close combat, when you would get a loot counter, or anytime I guess you would pick up a loot counter, you can instead choose to destroy it. Because again, your units can only have 1, so you can start depriving your opponent of being able to pick up loose counters that you left around. So that's the idea. And as for the terrain, over on the applicable side of the table, we have a height 2 hill. Down here, we have a height 1 obstacle. Right above it, we have a height 6 forest. To the left of that, another height 2 hill. Right below that, a height 1 obstacle. And then here's a bit of another height 2 hill, another height 6 forest. But those are not super relevant. And then, oh, I forgot to mention this. Over here, we have, in my opponent's deployment zone, a height 0, not height flat, graveyard, of course, and then way in my deployment zone, so right on over here, we have another height flat graveyard, or not height flat, height 0 graveyard. So that's the terrain, and that's the army. Let's get into the list themselves. So starting with my opponent's army, first off, we have the first Hydra over here, followed by a regiment of witches. I believe these are the ones with the brew of haste. Right behind them, we have the first troop of gargoyles, followed by a second troop of gargoyles. Right in front of that, we have the second regiment of blade dancers, and then we have the first troop of blade dancers. I think, nope. Over here, we have the illegal gargoyles, 1 too many, and right in front of them, we have the second troop of blade dancers. Moving to the left of that, as I would see it, we have, oh no, actually, let's walk a picture, let's walk a picture back. Over here, behind the Hydra, you can see her a little bit, this model is the first High Priestess, and that is the one with the Inspiring Talisman. Now, to the left of the gargoyles and the blade dancers, we have the unit of fiends, and right behind them is the weakness priestess with the Mirrodin's fire art. To the left of that, we have the second Hydra. Then we have, to the left of that, the first horde of crossbowmen. That is the one with the Blessing of the Gods. Right behind that horde is the ASB with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, and to the left of that we have the second horde of crossbowmen with the Dragon Shard shield. So that's my opponent's army. Actually, he's doing a pretty cool idea. You can't really see it back here, but this is going to be a Morrowind army, so I think that's why he's focusing so much on crossbowmen and not on chariots, so it might just be a thematic difference. Anyway, the crossbowmen are great, they're just not a melee unit. Next up, we have the Empire of Dust, of course. Starting on, this would be my right flank, but on the left here, we have the Soul Snare, of course, followed by the first regiment of mummies to the right of that. Right behind them is my first Cursed High Priest, that is the one outside the formation. Then we have my horde of revenants right here with the Banner of the Griffin. Right behind them, we have my second Cursed High Priest with heal. That is the one in the mummy formation. Then we have the Scavengers. In front of the Scavengers, we have the second regiment of mummies. Then we have 1, 2 bone giants. Right between them, or actually behind this bone giant, is Mortibrist. Right here we have my Shobik model for now. It does bug me putting out like a Horus model for Shobik because Shobik is a crocodile, but anyway. And right here we have my horde of chariots. Just finished up their base, looking all right. I'm happy with it for a simple job. And yeah, let's get into the battle. So turn 1. Turn 1 goes to the Twilight kin, I believe. I win the roll up and I make my opponent go first. So most of the units dash forward. We've got these crossbowmen just getting on top of the hill so they can lay down some fire. They're not quite on the hill just yet, but I do have height 3 and height 4 units, so not the biggest difference. Then these crossbowmen, of course, advance forward along with the rest of the line. These witches here advance to just within 3 inches of this objective so they can grab a loot counter real quick. And then, yeah, that's about it. I think with all my opponents shooting, they put up 3 damage onto this chariot horde with all of the, after all said and done, with the crossbowmen and the Bane Chance. So, and then because Shobik is right here, I get that Aura of Shobik and I heal 1 back, so down to 2 wounds. And here is an end of turn shot. So things are looking, pretty standard for turn 1. So let's flip over to the Empire of Dust. Empire of Dust also just sort of advanced forward a little bit. I advanced my chariots forward here, and the idea is that I just want to be able to threaten these crossbowmen. The chariots are currently a dash. I don't have the banner near them, but I wasn't really used to using the banner in this list anymore since I've taken it out a long time ago. So they are out of that aura, but they are in the Mortibris and the Shobik aura. And we'll see how that goes. I move my birds right here to be basically on this obstacle, but they are within 20 inches of this unit of crossbowmen and just have line of sight to them as well. So I plan to just get these giants out of the way and then head on in for the kill there. My opponent didn't advance into this forest, so I'm pretty safe with how I can advance my monsters because they're protected against getting charged by any of these fiends or this Hydra right now. Now, my units on my right flank, things are a little messier just because these witches are so fast. Well, not these ones because they have a token right now, but in general, they're base speed 7. This Hydra is speed 6, which I actually forgot about. I thought the Hydra was speed 7 for some reason. There was no reason for me to be within charge range in that case, but anyway, I thought it was, so whatever. But the witches are speed 7, so they can come on in. And then the other witches are also pretty fast, but they're hidden behind this hill, right? So my opponent, again, didn't get onto the hill, I guess, for some shooting reason. And yeah, I'm just not super afraid. I've got my soul snare here, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm just gonna obviously shoot at this Hydra, but then I thought, oh, why would I just give it bonus attacks? Especially because, again, I thought that the Hydra were speed 7, so this one could charge my giant, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to give them both bonus attacks. That's dumb, so I choose to not do it. But I do make a slight error, which I'll go into on my opponent's turn 2. And but the other thing I do is Mortibris casts heal onto my chariots, ends up healing those 2 wounds off, and that's it. So we move forward. Here's the action shot of my chariots. I think they fired into the archers on the hill, maybe, or no, they shot at this ASB. Since the archers aren't on the hill yet, I can still see it, and I shoot into it. I don't do any wounds. It's fine. And here's the end of turn shot. So moving on to turn 2. So turn 2. Yeah, so let's talk about the right flank real quick, and this is the mistake I made. I was trying to keep this 1-inch gap, right, between my units just to help me maneuver, but with how I moved forward, I really should have closed this a bit more, because the plan is to make it so the revenants can block for my mummies, but that doesn't work when you're not in base-to-base contact, because the whole point is to make it so the Hydra cannot get the corner-to-corner charge onto the mummies, and so it's either the Hydra can charge or the witches can charge. So again, I messed up, but in the end, this wasn't even the worst mess up. The mess up was not realizing that a Hydra is speed 6. So I should know that by now, and I just forgot. Anyway, so these witches and the Hydra go into my mummies. They end up dropping the loot token somewhere back here. My opponent hasn't marked it yet because he didn't realize that loot slows you down, or just kept forgetting it. It was this was a very late game, so there's a lot of stuff like that, hence the 3rd unit of gargoyles and all that. But yeah, you'll see how we adjust that in the end. Then this unit of witches moves on to the control point, so they can get a loot token as well, and then these gargoyles just pop forward to block up my revenants and mummies, which is a pretty solid idea. The rest of my opponent's turn, yeah, in the center, doesn't move forward, and I'm wondering about that because by not challenging me on this token, I can just basically do whatever I want, and especially because I can just walk into the forest and cast Surge anyway. With all these Strider units, it's just not that big of a deal to, whether I charge you or not. So I guess I wouldn't have done this, but my opponent did, so whatever. The Hydra, I believe, moves back a little bit to get out of 14 inches of this giant, which is a prudent plan. And yeah, these archers finally just move forward onto the hill. So let's get into my opponent's shooting, and here we go. Yeah, so my opponent was, if we roll back, so here we go. First off, my opponent nails the Bane Chant onto the Blessing the Gods unit. So this unit fires, that's 20 shots, but it's only on 5s because I have Stealthy due to Mortibus, right? So 20 shots on 5s with reroll 1s, and then wounding me on 3s with reroll 1s. So a decent chance at some wounds, and then followed up with 20 shots on 6s, re-rolling 1s to wound, and that's it. And my opponent manages 13 wounds on these chariots, and I'm like, wow, that is way above average. But anyway, it doesn't matter until the break test, so we'll see how that goes. And yeah, that's how it goes. So I get blown right the fuck out of the water, and that chariot horde is gone, which is really bad because I didn't really have a contingency plan over here. I mean, giants versus archers, not the best use of them. So anyway, that's not great. Over here on the right, things go a little better. My opponent does, looks like not a lot of wounds, maybe 7 wounds to those mummies, which is not really enough to get the, well, they're a -19, so I guess boxcars twice will do it, and my opponent does not manage it. So the mummies are still there, and we move on to Empire of Dust turn 2. So without the chariots, I have to get a little weird here. Originally, I was going to send this giant forward to threaten one of these units, but in the end, I can't do that. I do get my bird charge into these crossbowmen, so that's still good. And then I set up this possible surge charge from this, so I can surge with this wizard. I mess up again with Mortibus because at this point, I'm still assuming that the Hydra has a 14-inch charge, so Mortibus wants to be right here, but that would be within 14, not within 12 though. So, bit of a mistake, but whatever. The plan is to cast Surge onto this giant from this Cursed High Priest. If I land it, that's great. If I don't land it, it's not the end of the world. So that's it, because I'll still be within the very inspiring presence of the Shobik. So that's the movement over there. In the center, it looks like this giant maybe charged into the gargoyles. I can assure you it did not. It's just standing there. Originally, I did have a plan to go in there, but then I decided to take the mummies in because with the chariots gone, I have to do a weirder play over here on the left. So I don't get to do what I wanted. The Revenants do an interesting move here. So basically I just crab walk to the side, and the witches here are just slightly farther forward than the gargoyles because the mummies were slightly back, right? So when they charge in, they adjust, and that's all fine. So if I cast Surge here, the 1-inch surge will take me into the witches before it'll take me into the gargoyles, and that's what I want. The mummies decide to take the counter charge onto the Hydra. Maybe not the best plan right now because this other Hydra is ready to fight, but it's what I do. In my head, I was like, well, yeah, the mummies plus the soul drain here, or the soul drain, the drain soul here should be enough in my mind. So yeah, that's the plan. And yeah, that's about it. Here is the action shot. I do manage to succeed at both my surges. I actually only roll a 1-inch out of my surge 10 here. I only manage 1 hit, but that's all I needed to get in on these witches. So I do that. And then I manage, I think this was a 4 or 5-inch surge that with this giant, so I managed that one as well. And with the drain life, I end up doing, I think, like 7 damage to that Hydra, so it does pretty well. And I'm like, well, yeah, no, that Hydra is probably dead fighting the mummies in formation now. And looks like that's the end of turn shot. So you can see, well, I didn't kill that Hydra. This Hydra ends up living because my mummies just roll terribly. I think I hit 3 times on with 12 attacks on 4s with reroll 1s, and then I manage 1 or 2 wounds. So not the best. I do roll very high on my nerve checks though, and manage to waver it, so that's great. The Revenants do a very similar sort of combat with these witches, where they roll in, they do they don't roll too well to hit and wound. I don't remember exactly. I think I end up 7 wounds on them. it's not the worst because I have 25 attacks on 4s, so like 12ish hits, and then I wound on 3, so just a little below average there. But still, I managed the waiver. They are headstrong, so it's not quite as good there, but we'll see how that pans out. These mummies do not flub and manage to kill off the gargoyles. I was worried for a second after the other mummies decided to sort of shit the bed, but anyway. My giant that got into these crossbowmen ends up doing like 2 wounds. I think I end up getting 12 attacks, so I get the 6 on the attack. I only hit 3 times, and I manage only the 2 wounds, but I was just looking for 1 or 2 wounds anyway, so got it. The birds do a couple wounds to these crossbowmen, so I'm feeling good about that. Again, just looking for that disordered, and that's it. So moving on to turn 3. So turn 3. Things are getting a little bit more heated as the numerical superiority of the Twilight Kin is really coming to the fore here. I don't think I mentioned last turn that these, like I said, the witches ended up dropping their loot token back here since they couldn't make this charge otherwise. And yeah, the gargoyles, instead of doing whatever move they did, they just walked over and grabbed it. So they have a loot token. The witches with the loot token here are fighting against have charged into my revenants. The other witches fail their headstrong, which is great, and just back up. Back up a little bit behind the Hydra, it looks like. So, not sure what happened there. No, they must have passed their headstrong. They must have passed the headstrong and decided to go into the revenants. So that's what they do. The other witches are just bringing up the rear. The witches get supported in a charge by these gargoyles, so that's nice. The troop of witches, so if we roll 2 pictures back, these troops of witches cannot combo charge, and that's why I didn't reposition my mummies at all, because I don't think it matters. So they can do a crisscross charge where this unit charges in on my giant and this unit charges in on my mummies, but this unit is going to be hindered, and I'm just not worried about a troop of witches versus my mummies. Granted, I might want to be worried in the future. I mean, they are 20 attacks on 3 pluses, and there's a lot of Bane Chant to go around, but still, not super worried. So yeah, that's the middle of the board. The fiends just move forward onto the center objective to grab a loot token for themselves as well. It looks like they're sitting on 1 wound, so I think, oh, that's right. Mortibrus, since I didn't need to cast Surge, and in fact I couldn't, just flings a lightning bolt at them real quick, ends up causing 1 wound. Just looking for that lucky boxcar. So we've got that going. The crossbowmen here with the Blessing of the Gods go into my birds looking for a quick kill, and the other crossbowmen go into my giant just looking to start stacking some damage up. So that's about it. These wizards right now are looking to get some Bane Chants, so we've got 1 Bane Chant here, 1 Bane Chant here, 1 Bane Chant here. This Bane Chant is a big one because it has witches to target. This wizard probably wanted to relocate a little bit more over here since elves are speed 6, so getting a Bane Chant onto these witches could really swing the game right now with just a bit of luck, right? Because 20 attacks on 3s and 4s could pop these mummies. It's possible, especially if the revenants are gone, to get rid of that Banner of the Griffin. So probably a bit of a mistake there, but my opponent does instead cast the Bane Chant, I believe, onto archers. Again, just I don't understand that at all. But does pop the Mirrodin's Fireheart, I believe, right now to cast Weakness onto the Revenants, which is a good play since the Revenants have no innate crushing. I did not buy them any crushing, and only have one case of Bane Chant, and it's all the way on the other side of the table. So yeah, pretty good play there. Here is the action shot. A lot of nice witches fighting the rear of my skeletons because my skeletons don't play well with others. So especially a bunch of pointy daggered ladies. So anyway, and here is the end of the turn shot. So a lot of blue dials out because we're very injured, but we're not out of it. So first off, on the left, you can see the giant ends up taking, I think it's 3 or 4 wounds. So the archers do pretty well against me. But not enough to even make a roll yet. So I am, I believe, slightly out of Aura of Shobik after doing that surge charge. So you get what you get. The birds here end up taking quite a bit of damage and just barely hold on. My opponent rolls a 3, and I believe that they are a... 911 unit. They're either 911 or 810. So my opponent either did 6 damage and rolled a 3 or did 7 damage and rolled a 3. So either way, we're still up and running. Maybe I'm even higher nerve. I don't know. I don't use scavengers very often. But yeah. And then in the middle of the table, you can see this giant took 3 damage. Is also out of Aura of Shobik, maybe, but not really that big of a deal. The mummies here take, it looks like 6 or 8 damage there. That's a lot, and getting a Bane Chant there would have been very deadly, especially as this wizard does succeed at its Bane Chant onto these crossbowmen right here fighting the birds. So yeah, that would have been pretty good. And then down here in the Revenants, they take a lot of damage. They take, I think, 18. My opponent rolls insanely high here, but again, it doesn't matter until you roll that break test and can't manage the 6 to kill them. So that is very lucky for me. And that's about it. So all the waivers clear, and we move on to turn 3 for the Empire of Dust. So turn 3 Empire of Dust looks very similar to what the last picture we just saw, because, well, we're in it now. This giant decides to just forego fighting the archers and turns to walk over here. It looks a little wonky, but that's just because this ended up getting really pushed around. So anyway, the giant goes up and then over, which is fine. So, oh no, that's not fine. I cheated here. Whoops. So, bit of a mistake. I was thinking when I did this, I was like, oh yeah, so I'm like this. I just move forward and then I'll pivot here. So I actually did a double pivot. So this is cheating, but show must go on. So the cheating giant moves forward to threaten the flank of this Hydra, hoping to kill it off. I get a charge here from this giant into the Fiends. The plan is to lock it down with one giant. Shobik can cast heal onto this giant and then be surged into the fight as well. So looking to get some heal value and then also get that surge going. Down here, we've got a flank charge from my mummies who corkscrew into these witches or blade dancers. So looking for a kill there. Looks like they regen quite a bit of their damage. And I've got a healing backup right there. I send the Revenants into the witches again. Yeah, there's no reason to attack those gargoyles. So yeah, go into the witches. I end up, I've got a heal here and then the soul snare right here to get that up a little bit. The mummies, it looks like I'm fighting the flank of this Hydra. It's not, it's just turned like that. It's a little weird, but yeah, just went back into the fight there. It only regened 1 wound, so it's down to I think 8. So hopefully they do not repeat what they did last time. And I've got the soul snare here for that drain life. So cast drain life. I do all my healing here. I do very well again with my drain life, thankfully. So a bit of damage there, and that's about it. Well, we really need to get some tokens here. I've got this possible surge, but I have 0 tokens, and my opponent has 1, 2, 3, I think right now, 3 tokens up. So not looking great. Here is the action shot. So I do succeed at getting this surge off and the heal. So I heal the giant back up to full. I also get this surge off, the totally illegal one. Yikes. But happens sometimes. And this is the end of the turn. So yeah, the cheater giant kills off the Hydra, turns to face like this back at the archers, looking for some fun. These giant plus Shobik, again, I do not roll very well here. I roll really high for the number of attacks on the giant. It gets either a +6 or a +5, pretty good. But no, sorry, that's a +4. This one got a +6 because of course it did. So I do not roll very well on my rolls to hit or wound, but then on both these checks, I just roll insanely high on my breaks. So you get what you get. The mummies kill off that troop of witches and then pivot a little bit. So these witches are going to be in their front. I couldn't. No, I'm totally out of the line of sight of these gargoyles. So, anyway, I pivot a little bit to get the witches in the front, not into the flank. These gargoyles cannot see me, so even if they drop their loot token, they can't charge. And then, yeah, these mummies easily kill off the Hydra this time, advance towards the witches here, and my Revenants kill off the other witches. So thankfully, we've got that going for us. But let's move on to turn 4. So turn 4, and Yeah, you can see things are getting a little messy. Just like I cheated over here with the giant, my opponent cheats here because I remember distinctly measuring and making sure that these gargoyles did not have a flank charge on my mummies. And in fact, you can, if we walk back, it's pretty easy to see that line, right? So yeah, it's just stuff that happens as it gets later in the night. So a flank charge from gargoyles, that's probably not that big of a deal anyway. And then we've got a front charge from the witches. It looks like my mummies are on 2 wounds. Yeah, I remember them. They're on 2 wounds right now. So, it could spike. It could be bad. I did waver these fiends, so that was great. But, anyway, I digress. I do waver these fiends, so they're not doing a whole lot right now, just sort of staring down my giant and Shobik. Then these crossbowmen charge back into my birds because my opponent originally charges into them, and again, I go, they're not a melee unit, just shoot at me. You're much better at that. So yeah, just sitting there ready to shoot, especially because my opponent has a sorceress right here with Fireball 10 and Vicious. I think they have Fireball 10, so that, you could send the Fireball here and then shoot into my giant if they wanted. So yeah, no reason to shoot these birds. The other archers just pivot a little bit because they want to pick up a loot token this turn, which is, that's pretty good. They have a number of targets right now. My stealth bubble does go out to this giant, so all these units are protected, or all these units are protected, but still some good shots, and that's about it. Well, we do have the second regiment of witches going into my regiment of mummies here, so yeah. And here is the action shot, I guess. Not sure what I'm showing off. Oh, this is the so my opponent's wizard here goes for the weakness instead of the fireball, which is again, that's a pretty good idea. Just I could get a Bane Chant this time, but still the only other target, like the fireball here, could happen into the birds, but since these are not piercing archers and my opponent does fail the Bane Chant onto them, there's not a high chance that you're going to clear this giant, and then I'm just going to heal that damage back up because, Shobik Aura will go off, and then I've got heal 6, heal 5, and heal 4 right here, so, and then life leech as well. So, yeah, I think my opponent goes for the smart move here, goes for the weakness instead. And yeah, let's see the end to turn shot. I guess this is the action shot. I took a few. So yeah, you can see they're sitting on 2 wounds right now, getting flank charged by gargoyles, which shouldn't have happened due to the way the units actually were. But again, this was like 2 in the morning. So moving forward, and here is the end of turn shot, which is on the left here. You can see the birds are gone. That's to be expected. The giant does not suffer any damage. I think that these archers shot at it. They could have shot at Mortibris, but anyway, they didn't. I think they shoot at that giant, don't do a whole lot. These mummies who get flank charge just barely live. My opponent does not roll too well, and it's mostly because these witches just roll terribly, but the gargoyles do almost all these wounds. The witches do 1 wound, and the gargoyles do 7, right? So it puts me on 10 wounds, rolls a boxcar first, and then doesn't manage the 9+ on the second, thankfully, and these mummies are up. But these completely unwounded mummies just get blown out of the water. They get, these witches do like 19 wounds to them, which is insane. My opponent did get the Bane Chant off, so that's good. But yeah, 25 attacks on 3s and 4s with Vicious. 19 that's a lot of wounds. But that's what happens. The witches are a deadly unit. So yeah, 1 mummy down, 1 to go. And that's about it. Let's move on to turn 4 for the Empire of Dust. So again, Empire of Dust, very reactionary army. It's a little easier. Excuse me about that. So we've got my giant here going back into these archers looking to finish the job. I send Shobik into these archers because why not? I just want to shut down their shooting. I don't really care about anything else. I do a bit of a tricksy move here, and I'm not sure this works. Now, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work, but still, it might be dubious to some of you, which is I take this giant here, that's in the center, and I crab walk to the left. No cheating with pivots this time, but I crab walk to the left, and I can move far enough that when I surge, I will hit the corner of these fiends with my corner. So, following the rules for surging into corners of units, So when you hit a corner of a unit with a surger, you figure out where the leader point was at the beginning of the surge, and then that's the side you charge into. Normally, it's just whatever front you hit first, right? So I moved perfectly, so I will just hit the corner with my corner, and my leader point is in the flank, so I think that's legal, but maybe a little shady. Still, I did it. So that's what I'm going for there. I take my mummies and get a nice countercharge into this troop of witches, hoping to finish them off real quick. I regen a ton of damage back, so I'm down to 4 wounds there. That is not after heal, that is just regen. I regen 6, so pretty high. The Revenants are not doing well right now. They've taken a lot of damage, but they're going for this charge here, and then I'm hoping to just get the Soul Snare plus a heal at least to get them, and then their own innate life leech, right, to get them healthy enough to take on gargoyles and witches. So that's the plan. And here is the action shot. Yeah, just showing off this clever maneuver, I'm going to call it. Clever maneuver. And yeah, here is the end of turn. So starting on the left, you can see this this giant actually rolls very well. I get the archers up to 11-ish wounds, and with brutal, that's a 9 to waver, 11 to kill. I get the waver, so that's pretty good. And then the Shobik does not manage to match the giant's fury though, but does manage a couple wounds, so they are disordered at least. This giant, the shady git here, does get that flank charge and easily dispatches with the fiends. Now it is funny because I only did like 3 wounds total, so I do all that maneuvering and yeah, only managed the 3 wounds. So maybe I needed it. The mummies managed to kill off that troop of witches. That is very helpful. I grabbed their loot counter as well, and my giant now has a loot counter from the fiends. And then these gargoyles that were here end up getting killed off by the Soul Snare, just draining them down. So again, Soul Snare, straight money, great unit. And the Revenants do manage some damage against these witches, and I believe that blue token back there means that they are wavered. So yeah, pretty good showing this turn. Things are definitely coming around. And we move on to turn 5. So turn 5 for the Twilight kin. They're just fighting for that win now. We've got just a bunch of charges. So crossbowmen charging. This unit of gargoyles has just been backing away the entire game. These witches, it looks like they passed their headstrong and are sent into me. That's fair enough. And my opponent this weakness is actually gone. I just haven't removed the token yet. So my opponent obviously going to go for a Bane Chant right there. I'm not sure what this wizard is doing at all. I think we end up moving it after this. Again, it's getting really late, so I think we're just forgetting about models, not really seeing how things are moved and so on and so forth. But that's fine. That wizard is getting ready to fireball nothing, or maybe Bane Chant some crossbowmen. And that's about it. So it's a pretty simple turn. Here is the action shot. Oh no, these were wavered. That's right. They don't charge into my giant. My giant is free. It's a free giant. Dobby. And could have popped dragon. I think my opponent popped Dragon Shard Shield right now as well, since I believe you can do that while wavering. So anyway, so this unit is now def 6, so that's really good. The other archers the other crossbowmen do a decent amount of damage to Shobik, which is surprising considering I'm def 6 and the Bane Chant fails, but still, you know what happens. Gets me up to at least a roll here, so that must be 5 damage because I think Shobik is... no, 6 damage because I think Shobik is dash 18. So anyway, pretty good there. And maybe they are melee in it. Maybe I'm wrong. This wizard also fails Bane Chant, which is pretty funny. But still, the witches do all right onto my Revenants. But the Revenants have been healed a lot. So I think they're down to like 2 or 3 wounds total. And the witches just can't pull out that magic again to kill them. And here is the end of turn shot. Oh no, this is turn 5 for Empire of Dust. So turn 5 Empire of Dust, I move the Soul Snare. So there's just a sliver here where I can see the gargoyles to shoot at them. I send the Revenants into the witches. I take these mummies and I just run at this hill, I guess. There's not a whole lot to do for the mummies right now. I don't want to go over here and risk losing a loot token to off shooting or some weirdness. I'll just let the giant solve it. So yep, the wizards are now sort of rotating around. Mortibrus is sitting on the edge of the forest because, oh that's right, this wizard fireballed Mortibrus, so you can see her final final placement, where she just had this little like sliver at Mortibris, and does pretty well. It does like 5 damage to him, which is pretty crazy, but still. Mortibris decides to hide here. I've got a sliver of line of sight to the wizard to shoot her with lightning bolt, because why not? And then this loot counter, I didn't drop it, I just haven't moved it. And then my wizards are just sort of sitting around here to make sure that I've got my inspiring line, just that 6/6/6 kind of thing. And that's it. So moving on, this is the action shot. The revenants, of course, did charge into the witches this turn. And here's what happens. So this giant goes into these archers, brings them up. They're at like 18. No, they're at 16-ish damage. No, 18. They are at 18 damage, which is 19 with brutal, and I double one it. So double one of the game. I guess it wasn't fully double ones. It was double one. It was yeah, they're at 18, so 19. I needed a 2 to waiver. Well, I needed a 3 to waiver in reality, but 4 to kill, 2 to waiver. So I double won it, and that's unfortunate, but it happens. But the other combats go pretty well. Shobik plus this giant easily finish off the crossbowmen with the banner, or the Blessing of the Gods. Sorry about that pop. Blessing of the Gods, so they are gone. And the witches are still here. My revenants went into them, but haven't killed them. Maybe I didn't roll it yet, but because I remember killing them right here. I do end up doing quite a bit of damage to these gargoyles. I get them up to 5, but apparently I didn't take a picture because I double won this too. So I get 2 double ones this turn, 1 on gargoyles and 1 on crossbowmen. And we move on to turn 6. So turn 6, I just hadn't rolled the Revenant combat yet. So the Revenants have killed off the witches. There's not a whole lot going on. My opponent just takes their 2 sorceresses and just goes for a combined Fireball 20 onto my mummies, just going for that Hail Mary kill. Oh, no, that's right. I don't double one it. I'm such a liar. I roll a 3 because I get the waiver. So yeah, they're wavered and just wandering back, regenning a few wounds off, just staying away from me. The crossbowmen get this charge into my giant. They get Bane chanted up. They are ready to rumble, and that's about it. So here is the end of turn shot. You can see not a whole lot happened. The mummies did take a lot of damage. It's I think like 10 damage, which is pretty good. But my opponent cannot roll that 9+ to kill them. And over here, this giant also takes quite a bit of damage, but my opponent rolls pretty poorly on that break test as well. So goes in my favor. And we move on to Empire of Dust turn 6. Empire of Dust turn 6 is pretty easy. I take my giant, go into the crossbowman again. I move Shobik over here to be surged into 1 wizard. I run this giant over here to grab a loot token. Or no, I think that giant has a loot token. So I don't know what he's doing, but he's over there. I move these, or I charge this wizard with my mummies, and then I move again the soul snare, or maybe I didn't move the soul snare because the gargoyles didn't move. Either way, I'm just going for that shot on the gargoyles there. I also have Mortibris as a backup if I need it. So anyway, moving forward. Here's so yeah, the giant goes back into these crossbowmen, and I roll a double one again. So I've double won this unit 2 turns in a row. It is the hardiest crossbowman, I guess. So yeah, they're ready to go. And then I double won this wizard. So I do end up getting 3 double ones in this game. Pretty funny. I don't get any more, and that is the end of the game. So Shobik does easily kill off this wizard, and my this was the end of my movement, which is the revenants got moved a little bit, and then I moved the soul snare forward to shoot at the gargoyles. So I end up killing them off. My opponent has 1 loot token due to a series of comical double ones, and I have 1 loot token, 2 loot tokens, 3 loot tokens. So it is a 3-1 victory, just squeaked by there. And I have a decent attrition point lead, but it's not dominating. So it ends up being a pretty good game, even though both of us cheated in it. Both of us did not bring the correct number of points, because I played 10 points under. My opponent played 65 points up, and we played at like 2 in the morning. So, it's what happens. But I hope you guys enjoyed the report anyway, and until next time, bye.